What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so in this particular video, I want to focus on a player who has become largely unsung, and that is Dave Cowens of the Boston Celtics. You know, in today's age, a lot of people are more interested in perimeter players, guys who got the best handles, who got the three ball, who looks the best on ESPN highlight reels. But you know, me, I have an affinity toward the centers. All right. I just grew up liking how centers did all the hard work. You know, rebounding, playing defense in the post, shot blocking, setting screens. That shit always interests me because they're the ones who are doing the hard work. You know, oftentimes when we look at movies, right? Of course, we see the stars, we see the people in front of the camera, but we don't really appreciate the people behind the camera who make all the magic happen. And it seems like in basketball, increasingly, the centers, those faceless centers, you know, I'm not talking about the stretch fours and fives. I'm talking about the people who work in, you know, down low, rebounding and shot blocking, the little bit shot blocking that still is today. They're the ones behind the scenes that don't get all of the press clippings anymore. But at one point in time in our history, the center position was a valued position. Teams used to build around the center. And after Bill Russell set the standard for what a great all around center was supposed to be when he retired in 1969, it was thought that the Boston Celtics dynasty would be dead for quite some time. And then comes Dave Cowens, all right? Dave Cowens went to college, I think, in Florida State. He was drafted in 1970. And Dave Cowens was the goods, all right? Dave Cowens, he might kind of put you in a vein of somebody like maybe Alonzo Mourning mixed with young Dennis Rodman. He was energy, he was hustle, he was hard work, he was tenacious, just perpetual motion. And that's one of the things that separated Boston a little bit, the Celtics, from some of the other teams in the 1970s. While they were never able to win back-to-back championships in the 70s, the most competitive overall era in basketball, they are the only team ever to win more than one championship in the 1970s. And you can make a strong argument, had it not been for John Havlicek's significant arm injury or elbow injury in 73, they probably would have won back-to-back titles in 73 and 74. Dave Cowens, for his career, averaged 17.6 points, 13.6 rebounds, and 3.8 assists per contest. He was also, even though he was not a naturally gifted scorer, you know, he wasn't a great shooter per se, but he was a bit better than Bill Russell, all right, who only averaged, 14 points on 44% shooting. Cowens usually shot somewhere around the mid 40s to upper 40s. So he was a little bit better scoring the basketball. Far better free throw shooter, 78% for his career, which is always an asset for your big man to be able to knock down free throws, meaning that you could have him in the ball game in late close contests, and you know, you have to worry about him being a problem or detriment. He was also a really good passer from the pivot. During his 8-year peak from 1970 to 78, he averaged 18.8 points, 15.2 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.2 steals, 1 block per game, on 46% shooting overall from the floor, and 78% from the foul line. For his career, Dave Cowens was a 2-time NBA champion. All right. He was a two-time NBA champion, 1974 and 1976. He was the 1972-73 league MVP, eight-time NBA All-Star, the 1973 NBA All-Star Game MVP, three-time All-NBA second team, NBA All-Defensive First Team 1976, two-time NBA All-Defensive Second Team, the NBA Rookie of the Year 1970-71. He was on the NBA All-Rookie team of the same year. He's on the 50th anniversary team, the 50 greatest players and the 75 greatest players. And of course, his number 18 is retired by the Boston Celtics, and his number 13 retired by the Florida State Seminoles. Now, unfortunately, because of his style of play, much like Larry Bird, because of his hustle, hard core style of play, balls to the walls, throwing everything, throwing caution to the wind, the way he played so hard, it shortened his career. All right, he wasn't a guy that's going to play 16, 18 years, even in those days. He only wound up playing really 10 years, an abbreviated stint with the Milwaukee Bucks. Dave Cowens is a guy that suffered, according to his account, more than 30 sprains in his career. He broke his foot, I think, at least twice. He fractured his leg at least 3 times. So this is a guy that really did a lot of damage to his body over the years. And you can see a tail off in his production after 1978. But his finest season individually came in 1973. All right? That particular year, Dave Cowens averaged 20.5 points, 16.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 43.7% shooting overall, so not his most accurate shooting season from the floor, but he did shoot 83.2% from the foul line. And most importantly, the Boston Celtics went 68-14 that year. 68-14. As a matter of point, I've often seen people refer to the 86 Celtics as having the best record in Boston Celtics history. I've seen people who are professional writers write that the 86 Celtics had the best record in the history of the franchise, when in reality, that's not the case. It was the 72-73 Boston Celtics. They won 68-14. Not only did Dave Cowens win league MVP, Tom Heinsohn won head coach of the year as well, which is kind of remarkable considering that Tom Heinsohn is often seen as a mediocrity at the head coaching position. But I guess when you win 68 games back in the 70s, that's something. Ultimately, however, I believe in the Eastern Conference Finals, they lost to the New York Knicks in 6 games, who themselves won 60 games that year, which at the time was a franchise record to be tied by the 1992-93 Knicks, who also lost, lost in 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, but to a team in Chicago. I can't say for certain that Boston would have won, but the odds would have been really high that Boston probably would have won that series if John Havlicek had not been hampered by a severe shoulder and elbow injury. All right, it really affected his shooting. He was not himself, and that injury probably derailed what should have been a championship team. And we'd be looking at Boston differently, because they would have been seen as the team of the 70s, even more so, that they had 3 championships, and it would have been the only team to have multiple championships in the 70s, and the only team to have back-to-back championships in the 70s. So Dave Cowens, one of the most tenacious, most respected players in the NBA. Look, opponents did not like going up against him. They didn't, because you knew that going up against him, I would say him and Wes Unseld, people hated going against these guys because you were going to be in for a dogfight. You were going to be exhausted. You were going to be just completely drained having to compete against Dave Cowens because he's one of these guys that was perpetual motion. You know, I think Kareem did not like going up against him. Now, although statistically Kareem had some great performances against him, I did a video about that. Statistically, Kareem had some great performances against Dave Cowens. But guys like Dave Cowens, guys like Wes Unseld, definitely Artis Gilmore, Kareem hated going up against those guys because they were physical. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.